The morning sky over Velenor Prime turned black with enemy ships. Farmer Kyrellin dropped her harvesting tools and ran toward the communication center as the first explosions shook the ground. Her forearms moved quickly across the control panel, while her large eyes watched the destruction begin outside. "This is Velenor Prime calling anyone who can hear us." She spoke into the transmitter. "We are under attack. The Vorthan Empire is destroying our world. We need help. Please, someone, help us." The Cathara had lived peacefully on this world for over 200 years. They grew the finest grains in the galaxy and traded them for the few technologies they needed. Had no weapons, no military, no way to fight back against the massive warships now filling their sky. Kyrellin watched through the window as green plasma beams struck the city center. Buildings that had stood for generations turned to dust in seconds. She could see families running through the streets carrying their children, looking for places to hide. But there was nowhere to run from ships that could destroy entire cities. From space, the first response came from the Altarian Federation. Their message was polite, but cold. "Velenor Prime, we acknowledge your distress call. However, the Altarian Federation is currently engaged in important trade negotiations with several neighboring systems. We cannot commit military resources. At this time, we suggest you attempt to negotiate a peaceful resolution with your attackers." Kyrellin stared at the message screen. Negotiate. The Vorthans were not talking. They were killing. Another explosion rocked the building, and she had to grab the console to keep from falling. The second response came from the Zephyrian Council. Like people of Velenor Prime, the Zephyrian Council feels deep sadness for your situation. We are sending thoughts and prayers to your people during this difficult time. Fortunately, our military forces are committed to defending our own borders. We encourage you to remain strong and seek diplomatic solutions. More cities were burning now. Communication Center's emergency power was failing as the main grid went down across the planet. Kyrellin could hear the screams of her people even inside the shielded building. She tried again. "Please, this is Elder Kyrellin of Velenor Prime. We are farmers. We have children. We have done nothing wrong. The Vorthans are killing everyone. Our population centers are being destroyed. We will all be dead in ours if no one helps us." The Drakmor Alliance responded next. Their message was short and brutal. "Velenor Prime, the Drakmor Alliance has no interest in your agricultural world. Your planet offers no strategic value. Fight your own battles." The Corvin Republic sent a longer message, but it meant the same thing. "While we sympathize with your plight, the Corvin Republic must consider the safety of our own citizens first. Military intervention against the Vorthan Empire would put our worlds at risk. We advise immediate evacuation if possible." Evacuation. As if they had ships to carry 3 million people. As if the Vorthans would let them leave. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy found their reasons to stay away. The Helian Confederacy was too busy with internal politics. The Stellar Dominions cited their non-interference policy. The Free Worlds Coalition suggested forming a committee to study the situation. Hours passed, the attacks continued. Own City was hit next. She felt the building shake as plasma bombs fell on the residential district where her family lived. Her mate, her 3 children, her elderly parents, all gone in a flash of green light. She was alone now in the communication center. The other staff had fled or died. Backup power was failing. Outside, she could see Vorthan ground troops moving through the ruins, hunting for survivors. Soon they would find her too. With shaking hands, she activated the emergency broadcast. System one final time. This message would go out on every frequency, to every world, to every ship in range. It would be her last act, her final plea to a galaxy that had already shown it did not care. "This is Elder Kyrellin of Velenor Prime. I am probably the last of my people able to speak. The great civilizations of our galaxy have heard our cries and chosen silence. They have watched us die and done nothing. I do not ask for vengeance. I do not curse them for their cowardice. I ask only that someone, somewhere, remember that we lived. Remember that we loved our children. Remember that we tried to live in peace. If there is anyone listening who still believes that the strong should protect the weak, that the powerful should defend the innocent, then do not let others suffer as we have suffered. Do not let this happen again. The power died. The transmission ended. Kyrillin sat in the darkness and waited for the end. Outside, the footsteps of enemy soldiers grew closer. She closed her eyes and thought of her children's laughter, of golden grain fields swaying in the wind, of the peaceful world that had been her home. In a few hours, even these memories would be gone forever. The galaxy's greatest civilizations had spoken. No one was coming to help. Captain Park Jin-woo sat in his small office aboard the mining ship Resilience. Listening to Elder Kyrillin's final message for the third time, the converted cargo vessel shook slightly as it orbited the human colony world of New Sol. Through his porthole, he could see other ships in the Terran Defense Fleet, former freight haulers, converted mining vessels, and a few actual military craft that looked ancient compared to the sleek warships of the major galactic powers. "Sir Admiral Kim is calling for you," said Lieutenant Lee Sora from the doorway. Her young face looked troubled. Like everyone else in the fleet, she had heard the desperate pleas from Velinor Prime. Jinwoo walked to the bridge where the communication screen showed Admiral Kim Dong-soo's weathered face. Behind the Admiral, Jinwoo could see the command center of the human fleet's flagship, the Harmony, a former colony transport that had been fitted with weapons and armor plating. "Jinwoo, I know what you're thinking," the Admiral said before Jinwoo could speak. "We all heard the message from that Cathara world. But we need to be realistic about our situation." "Sir, they're all going to die if someone doesn't help them," Jinwoo replied. The Admiral sighed. "Son, we barely have enough ships to protect our own colonies. The Vorthans have dreadnoughts, ships that could destroy our entire fleet without taking damage. We've been part of galactic civilization for, 30 years? Most of the major powers still think we're primitives playing with toys." Jinwoo looked around the bridge of his ship. The crew was small, only 25 people, and most of them had been miners or cargo haulers before joining the fleet. Their weapons were modified mining lasers and improvised missile systems. Their armor was welded steel plates over civilian hulls. The Admiral was right. They were no match for a real military force. "What about the other powers?" asked Commander Han Yuri over the communication link from her ship, the Defiance. "Surely the Altarians or the Zephyrians will act." "I've been monitoring their communications," reported Intelligence Officer Choi Minho from the Fleet Command Center. "The Altarians say it's not their problem. The Zephyrians are offering prayers but no ships. The Drakmor Alliance won't even acknowledge the distress calls." Jinwoo felt a cold anger building in his chest. "So they're just going to let 3 million people die?" "It's politics, Jinwoo," Admiral Kim said sadly. "The Vorthines are powerful, and no one wants to make enemies of them over some agricultural world that can't defend itself. That's how the galaxy works." "That's not how we work," Jinwoo said quietly. The communication screen was silent for a moment. Then Commander Han Yuri spoke up. "Sir, my crew has been talking. We know it's dangerous. We know we're outgunned. 8. But these Cathara people, they're just farmers. They have children." "My ship's ready too, Admiral," said Captain Song Jae-hyun from the fighter squadron. "We didn't join this fleet to hide when innocent people need help." Admiral Kim rubbed his tired eyes. "Do you understand what you're suggesting? The Terran Defense Council will never approve a military action against the Vorthan Empire. We could start a war that humanity can't win. Then we don't ask for approval," Jinwoo said. "We volunteer. Individual ships, individual crews making their own choice." "That's mutiny," the Admiral said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, sir," replied Commander Han Yuri. "That's being human." Over the next hour, the reports came in from across the small fleet. Ship after ship volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission.
"Captain Yoon Tamin of the Heavy?"
Cruiser Steadfast was the first to formally request permission to depart. His ship carried the most powerful weapons in the human fleet, still pathetic compared to Vorthon warships, but better than nothing. "My grandfather fought in the Korean War on Old Earth," UN said over the communication link. "He told me once that you don't measure a man by whether he can win the fight. You measure him by whether he shows up when someone needs help." Even the youngest crews volunteered. Lieutenant Kim Dae-yoon, commanding a converted patrol boat with a crew of 8, Sent a simple message. We may not be much, but we're what they've got. Admiral Kim finally spoke again. I can't order this mission. The council would have my head. But I can't stop individual captains from taking their ships where they think they're needed. Ginwu felt a grim smile cross his face. Understood. Sir, we'll file our departure as a training exercise. Training for what? The Admiral asked. Learning how to do the right thing, Jinwu replied, as the small human fleet prepared to leave orbit. Communications Officer Lee Sora picked up another transmission from Velinor Prime. It was weaker now. Probably from portable equipment A. Cathara voice speaking in broken galactic standard. Anyone ... please? Children hiding in the tunnels ... Vorthons hunting them. Someone help ... Jinwu looked at his crew. They were scared he could see it in their faces. They all knew. They were probably going to die, but none of them suggested turning back. Set course for Velinor Prime, he ordered. Maximum speed. The human ships turned toward the distant world, carrying hope where the galaxy's great powers had brought only silence. Captain Choi Min-ho pressed his back against the broken wall as Vorthan plasma bolts scorched the air above his head. The central plaza of Shentai City was now a battlefield, filled with smoking craters and the bodies of both defenders and invaders. His small unit of human marines had been on the ground for 6 hours, and they were running out of ammunition. Sir, we've got more civilians coming from the East Tunnel, reported Sergeant Kim Down through his helmet radio. Looks like families with young ones. Minho peered around the corner and saw them, a group of Kethra, running across the open plaza, toward the evacuation point. Their forearms clutched small children while their large eyes searched frantically for danger.
How?
They were almost to safety when Vorthan soldiers appeared from behind a destroyed building. Cover them, Minho shouted. His marines opened fire with their modified mining lasers, forcing the Vorthons to take cover. The civilian families made it to the tunnel entrance, but now the enemy soldiers knew exactly where the humans were hiding, above the atmosphere. The small human fleet was fighting a desperate battle against overwhelming odds. Captain Park Jinwoo watched from the bridge of the Resilience as another human ship exploded in a ball of fire. The Vorthan dreadnought Bloodfang hung in space like a metal mountain, its weapons systematically destroying the attacking human vessels. We can't penetrate their shields, reported Lieutenant Lee Sora. Our weapons aren't strong enough. Then we get closer, Jinwoo said grimly. All ships, prepare for ramming speed. On the ground, Minho's position was becoming desperate. Vorthon reinforcements had arrived, and his small unit was completely surrounded. He activated his emergency beacon and spoke into his radio, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Captain Choi Minho of the Terran Marines. We are outnumbered and outgunned, but we are not leaving. There are innocent people in these tunnels, families, children, elderly Cathara, who never hurt anyone. If we die here, at least we die for something that matters. The Vorthon commander's voice crackled through the radio system. Human soldiers, you are fools. Your species means nothing to this galaxy. No one will remember your sacrifice. Surrender. Now, and we will give you quick deaths. Minho looked at his remaining Marines. There were only 12 of them left out of the original 30. They were tired, scared, and far from home. But when he looked in their eyes, he saw determination. Not fear. Maybe nobody will remember us, Minho said into his radio. But there's a little Cathara girl in these tunnels named Zixandra. She may be 5 years old, and she's scared and alone because your soldiers killed her parents. If we can keep her alive for one more day, that's enough reason for me. The battle in space was going badly for the humans. Ship after ship fell to Vorthon weapons. Captain Han Yuer's vessel, the Defiance, had taken heavy damage and was listing badly. Her crew of 20 had been reduced to 8 survivors. Captain, engine room reports we've lost main power, her engineer called out. We've got maybe 10. Minutes before complete systems failure, Rue looked at the massive Vorthan flagship on her screen. It was damaged, but still fighting, its weapons taking apart the remaining human ships with methodical precision. She made a decision that would be remembered long after her name was forgotten. All hands abandon ship, she ordered. Get to the escape pods now, Captain. What about you? Asked her second officer. One has to fly this ship, Yuri said calmly. And I know exactly where it needs to go. As her crew evacuated, Yuri turned the Defiance toward the Vorthan flagship. The converted cargo hauler wasn't much compared to a military dreadnought, but it was big enough and moving fast enough to do some damage. On the surface, Minho watched the sky light up as explosions bloomed among the stars. He couldn't tell who was winning, but he could see that the human ships were greatly outnumbered. His radio crackled with transmissions from the fleet. This is Captain Park Jinwoo to all ground forces. We're taking heavy casualties up here, but we're not giving up. Hold your positions. Protect those civilians. Roger that, Fleet Command, Minho replied. We'll hold as long as we can. The Vorthan ground assault began in earnest now. Armored vehicles rolled into the plaza while soldiers advanced from 3 directions. Minho's Marines fought from behind cover, making every shot count. But there were too many enemies and not enough ammunition. Sir Sergeant Kim is down, reported one of his men. We're down to our last power cells. Minho checked his weapon. Charge indicator showed red. Maybe 20 shots left. Round. His Marines were in the same situation. They had fought well, but the mathematics of war were against them. Then the sky exploded. Captain Han Yura's ship, the Defiance, struck the Vorthan flagship like a hammer hitting glass. The explosion lit up the night sky of Velenor Prime like a second sunrise. Chunks of burning metal rained down on both sides of the battle. In the sudden silence that followed, Minho heard something he hadn't expected. Vorthan voices shouting. In confusion and fear. For the first time since the battle began, the enemy advance stopped. All units, the flagship is down, came Jinwoo's voice over the radio. Press the attack now. The longest night of Velenor Prime was far from over, but for the first time, there was hope in the darkness. The explosion of Captain Han Yuri's ship lit up the entire planet like a new sun. On the ground, Captain Choi Minho felt the shockwave shake the earth beneath his feet. Burning pieces of the Vorthan flagship fell from the sky like metal rain, crashing into the plaza around his position. The big ship is hurt, shouted one of his Marines. Look at it! Minho looked up through the smoke and saw the massive Vorthan dreadnought spinning slowly, its hull torn open, atmosphere and debris streaming from the wound. Emergency lights flashed across its surface as the crew tried to regain control. All human ships, this is our chance. Captain Park Jinwoo's voice crackled over the radio from space. Hit them while they're blind. The remaining human vessels, battered and outnumbered, suddenly found new energy. Captain Song Jae-haen led his fighter squadron in a desperate attack, their small ships swarming around the damaged dreadnought like angry insects. The fighters were converted atmospheric craft, never meant for space combat, but they were fast and hard to hit. We can't hurt their armor, but we can confuse them. Jae-haen called out as his fighters weaved between the enemy guns. Keep moving! Don't let them target us! On the surface, the Vorthan ground forces were in chaos. Their orbital support was gone, and they couldn't call for reinforcements. Minho saw his chance and rallied his Marines. Now we attack, he shouted. For the Cathera, for humanity. The 12 surviving Marines charged from their cover, joined by Cathera civilians who had found courage in the humans' example. Farmers and teachers fought alongside soldiers, using farm tools and mining equipment. As weapons, the Vorthans, trained to fight organized military units, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before: ordinary people who refused to give up. Sergeant Kim Dayoon, wounded but still fighting, led a group of Cathera teenagers in an attack on a Vorthan supply depot. They used fertilizer bombs made from farm chemicals, weapons that no military manual had ever described. They fight like madmen. A Vorthan field commander reported to his superiors. These humans, ... they don't follow any tactical rules. They sacrifice everything for people they barely know. In space, Captain Yoon Taemin brought his heavy cruiser steadfast alongside the crippled Vorthan flagship. His ship was smaller and weaker, but the enemy vessel was badly damaged and couldn't maneuver. All power to weapons, Taemin ordered. We're going to finish this. Sir, if we get that close, their explosion might destroy us too, warned his weapons officer. Then we make sure it counts, Taman replied. The Steadfast fired everything it had into the wound that Captain Yuri's sacrifice had created. Mining lasers, missile pods, even the ship's emergency flares, anything that could cause damage. The Vorthon dreadnought's hull began to crack under the assault, but the Vorthons weren't finished yet. A second enemy cruiser moved to defend the flagship, its weapons targeting the brave human ship. The Steadfast shook under heavy fire, its hull plating melting under plasma bolts. Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, reported the damage control officer. We're losing atmosphere. Keep firing, Demin ordered. We don't stop until they do. On the ground, the tide of battle was turning. The Vorthons had superior weapons and training, but they were facing an enemy that didn't fight by the rules. Human Marines used suicide attacks to destroy enemy vehicles. Cathara civilians collapsed buildings on advancing soldiers. Everyone fought with the desperate courage of people protecting their families. Captain. Minnow found himself face to face with the Vorthon ground commander in the ruins of what had been the city's main library. The alien warrior was twice his size, armed with advanced plasma weapons and wearing powered armor. You cannot win, human, the Vorthon growled. You're superior in every way. Maybe, Minho said, raising his nearly empty rifle. We're too stupid to quit. The fight was brief and vicious. Minho's weapon couldn't penetrate the Vorthon's armor, but he used his smaller size and speed to stay alive. When his rifle ran out of power, he used a broken piece of metal from the destroyed library. When that broke, he used his bare hands. In the end, it wasn't superior technology that won the fight. It was the simple fact that Minho was willing to die to protect innocent people, while his opponent was just following orders. In space, the Vorthon flagship finally succumbed to the Steadfast's relentless attack. The massive ship broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the system, but Captain Taman's ship was caught in the blast, its hull cracking under the pressure wave. This is the Steadfast Taman broadcast on all frequencies as his ship began to break apart. The flagship is down. Repeat, enemy flagship destroyed. Velinor Prime is free. The remaining Vorthon ships, seeing their command vessel destroyed, and their ground forces in retreat began to withdraw from the system. They had come expecting an easy conquest of helpless farmers. Instead, they had met an enemy that fought with a fury they couldn't understand. As the enemy fleet disappeared into hyperspace, the survivors on Velinor Prime looked up at the stars. The battle was over, but the galaxy would never forget what had happened here. A small fleet of converted cargo ships had defeated a military empire, not through superior technology, but through sheer determination to do what was right. The underdogs had bitten back, and their bite had changed everything. 3 months after the Battle of Velinor Prime, Ambassador Oh-Hai-One stood nervously in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. She had never expected to be here. Humans had been members of galactic civilization for 30 years, but they had always been ignored, treated like children playing with adults' toys. Now every eye in the hall was watching her. The news of humanity's victory over the Vorthons had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Not because it was a great military triumph, the human fleet had lost half its ships and hundreds of brave souls, but because it represented something the galaxy had forgotten. The idea that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the safe thing. Ambassador O, said Counselor Veltar of the Altarian Federation, his voice carefully neutral. We have heard remarkable stories about your people's intervention at Velinor Prime. Haiwan looked around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of advanced civilizations. These were the powers that had ignored the Catharis' desperate pleas for help. These were the leaders who had found convenient excuses, while 3 million innocent people faced extinction. We did what anyone should have done, she said simply. We helped people who needed help. Your fleet was outnumbered 10-1, pointed out Counselor Zethmar of the Zephyrian Council. Your ships were converted cargo vessels. By all military logic, you should have been destroyed without accomplishing anything. Maybe we were too new to know better, Haiwan replied. We haven't learned yet that some people aren't worth saving. The chamber fell silent at her words. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Elder Kyrillan stepped forward. The Cathara survivor had traveled to the council to speak for her people. The first time her species had ever addressed the galactic government. Her arms moved gracefully as she spoke, her large eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. "Honored counselors," she began. "3 months ago, my people faced extinction. We called out to the galaxy for help, and the galaxy's greatest powers turned away. They had important trade deals to protect, they had political relationships to maintain, they had their own interests to consider." She paused and looked directly at each counselor. "But there was one species that heard our cries and acted, not because they had anything to gain, not because we could offer them riches or strategic advantage. They came because we needed help, and that was reason enough." In the weeks following the battle, the story had taken on a life of its own. Captain Park Jinwoo, now promoted to admiral, found himself receiving messages from across the galaxy, not from governments or military commanders, but from ordinary people who had heard what humanity had done. A mining colony on the edge of Drakmor's space, threatened by pirates, sent a simple message: "Please help us. No one else will come." A refugee settlement fleeing civil war transmitted coordinates and a desperate plea: "We have children here. The humans saved the Cathara. Will you save us too?" Is an agricultural world facing corporate raiders who wanted their land sent a formal request: "We know you understand what it means to protect farmers." "This is getting out of hand," Admiral Kim Dong-soo told Jinwoo during a conference call. "We're receiving 50 distress calls a week. Half the colonies in the Outer Rim think we're some kind of galactic rescue service." "Maybe we are," Jinwoo replied quietly. Back in the council chamber, Counselor Veltar was trying to regain control of the situation. "The Altarian Federation acknowledges the courage shown by humanity at Velinor Prime. However, we must consider the larger implications. Military intervention without proper authorization could destabilize with respect." Counselor Elder Kyrillan interrupted. "My children are alive today because someone refused to wait for authorization." The Cathara Elder activated a holographic display showing images from Velinor Prime before and after the attack. The before images showed peaceful farms, happy families, children playing in gardens. The after images showed ruins and graves. "These are the larger implications," she said softly. "Every day we debate and delay, people die." The humans understood. They acted while others talked. Captain Choi Minho, still recovering from his wounds, had been invited to address the council via hologram from his hospital bed on New Seoul. His face was scarred from the battle, but his eyes were clear and determined. "Counselors," he said, "my grandfather once told me that you measure a person not by whether they can win every fight, but by whether they show up when someone needs help. Humanity showed up. We lost good people doing it, but we'd do it again." Tomorrow, in the months that followed, something remarkable happened across the galaxy. Other species began to follow humanity's example. A Corvin merchant ship diverted course to rescue survivors from a pirate attack. An Altarian patrol squadron intervened to stop raiders threatening a peaceful colony. Even the Drakmor Alliance, notorious for their isolationism, sent aid to a world devastated by natural disaster. The galaxy was remembering what it meant to care about strangers. Ambassador Oh High One concluded her address to the council with words that would be remembered for generations. "We didn't save Velinor Prime to make humanity famous. We did it because 3 million people were going to die, and we couldn't live with doing nothing. If that makes us different from other species, then I'm proud of that difference." As she left the chamber, High One smiled. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy at last, not as conquerors or diplomats, but as the species that answered when others called for help.